Here comes Alabama into College Station to play Texas A&M, and everyone from Las Vegas to Phoenix City was telling me Texas A&M was going to win this game, including Lance Taylor, who sits beside me every day for 5 shows. And the point spread was wacky. And Alabama was, on the road, 109,000 against that great defensive line of Texas A&M. Hey, and listen, 6 sacks of Jalen Milroe. But Alabama got to Max Johnson 5 times. It was a sack fest. But Jalen Milroe, when he wasn't getting sacked, was a dude on Saturday, man. 321 yards. He threw some great balls, and he kept his composure. What did you make of Milroe this past week in Alabama's win?
We sat here at this exact same time a week ago, and we said this is going to be a game where the quarterback at Alabama is going to have to throw the ball to win because you're not running the football against Texas A&M's front. And you saw that yesterday. Now, I understand the sack numbers brought the rushing numbers down, but the run game with the running back was non-existent, right? So it did fall on Jalen Milroe's shoulders to make the plays that needed to be made. I thought he made huge strides. Your point about composure and poise and playing the next play, not getting caught up in the sacks, not getting caught up in a mistake, I thought was really, really impressive. I still feel like when I watch him, and our crew actually has Alabama and Arkansas this week, so get the chance to see him in person in Tuscaloosa. But I feel like when I watch him, the deep stuff is really, really good. It's almost like the more difficult throws, he throws better than the routine gimmies. So I think that's kind of the next part of his evolution is having some nuance in the short and intermediate game when it comes to maybe taking something off the ball, a certain ball placement away from a defender, throwing guys open. But the deep stuff has been awesome. And you can really actually go back to the Middle Tennessee game, and he threw some really good deep stuff there. He threw some nice long intermediate and deep stuff against Texas. So I thought it was the Alabama defense each and every week is starting to get better and better and better. They're more disruptive, playing on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Really felt like that Ole Miss game kind of turned the corner for them, and they haven't stopped since. So it was an impressive outing. It really was. And you talk about a must-win game. We just talked about, Notre Dame and what they went through at Louisville, and now they're out of it. Every game, this is going to be the scenario for Alabama going forward.
Yeah, listen, there's so many things I loved in this game. Some of it was the youth movement. Caleb Downs, by the way, that interception in the third quarter, I thought that was the game. That was the momentum changer because the one turnover from Milroe had just happened, and you just felt like the Aggies were about to take care of business on that after that turnover on that drive. And here's Caleb Downs, who film study only and instinct jumps the route and yanks the ball away from him. It's a great interception from a freshman.
Yeah, the kid is a special player. I think he's been penciled in as a starter from the moment he stepped on campus. He's just one of those mature kids where the learning curve is not too steep. And again, if you go back to that play, it was created by pass rush because it put Max Johnson back as he's retreating. So he's got nothing on the ball when he tries to throw the crossing route. He's got nothing on the ball. The ball dies and goes low and allows Downs to undercut it from behind. But again, that started up front. Pressure bursts the pipe, right? So now, if you look at this from its totality, you're going to say, okay, well, there's still a lot of penalties. Alabama had that one series where they had a bunch of procedure penalties.
Yeah, 9 false starts. Turnover. 9 false starts. Yeah.
False start. And again, you're in a hostile environment, but again, you go back to Texas playing in Tuscaloosa, didn't have any.
Yep.
Right? So you're going to have to clean that stuff up. The kicking game, I think that when you look at errors, like Nick Saban and his staff will start watching to look at maybe missed assignments and things that we wouldn't see watching the television copy, that there's things to clean up. But overall, there are a lot of positive things to build on there. And there's going to be some things to clean up. Honestly, I think that Texas A&M team is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And they're sitting here with that record, but they're capable of beating a lot of people. So I think the win is a really, really strong one.
Yeah, a couple of things that just blow my mind in this game. One of them is Alabama, a Nick Saban coached Alabama team, ran the ball for 23 yards,
I
net rushing,
know.
23 yards, and they won the game on the road. They held Texas A&M to 67. But a couple more bragging points on the defense. Anaya Smith only had one good punt return. Will Reichard, who hadn't punted basically his whole college life since his freshman year, gets called on, and he booms punts, but he gets great hang time, averaging about 41 and a half yards a punt. But the hang time is so good that Smith, one of the better return guys in the game, is having to fair catch time after time. Smith finishes with only one good punt return, 4 receptions, 88 yards. Evan Stewart had 3 receptions, 46 yards. They took what Texas A&M does well offensively and in the special teams. They took that out away from them. And that, with defense and special teams, that was fantastic for Alabama.
Well, it's really what saved them, because both teams were a push on third down offensively. Alabama had 14 penalties and one more turnover than Texas A&M did. So how do you win the game? It's those hidden plays in there. It's the plays that you just referenced, the punts and the hang time and not allowing a return. Well, let's just say there's 5 of those, and on average you get a 12, 13, 14-yard return. Or on average you get an 8-yard return. Well, that would be 5 times. Do the math. You're removing that field position yardage from the game. And so those little things start to add up. And when you're not playing particularly smart or disciplined, especially when it comes to penalties, that's where you win the game. It's that hidden stuff that we don't necessarily pay attention. We look at the touchdowns, we look at the interceptions, right? We don't necessarily look at that stuff the same way.
Another brag on the Alabama offense and Jalen Milroe. And some of this is Tommy Rees, okay, the guy who's calling the plays. And I want you to talk about this because I think some guys will go in with their big play sheet and try to impress me by calling 67 different plays throughout the course of the game. They had something they liked with Jermaine Burton and Isaiah Bond, and they kept sticking to that. They had 12 targets on Burton, 9 receptions for 197.
Yeah.
They had 9 targets on Bond, 7 receptions for 96. Tommy Rees saw a couple of matchups that he liked, and he didn't try to be the smartest guy in the room. He kept dialing it up over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, he did. And I think you go back to the Miami game and you see Miami did the exact same thing to Texas A&M. There was something in that secondary that they felt they had an advantage, and they attacked it, and they didn't come away from it. And to be honest with you, because they couldn't run the football effectively, I don't want to say they were left with no choice, but and you're right about, having 60, 70 plays or whatever it is. It's usually not the amount of plays. It's how the plays are window dressed. So you can try and figure out how to align this guy to get him matched up on this guy, but the play might be the same play that you ran in the last series out of just a different formation or different shift or emotion. It becomes about the matchup and how do we get our best guy on your weakest defender on as many opportunities as we can. I mean, that's a high rate. You targeted 12 and you catch 9.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something there that you feel like they have a major deficiency, and we're just going to keep going to the well. And listen, Tommy Rees is clearly, when I say growing up, I say that because he hasn't had a quarterback in the athletic type of mold as a Jalen Milroe. So he's trying to figure out too, all right, what can we do to maximize all those athletic gifts that he has, but still make him comfortable in the passing game and bring him along slowly. And I think as each game gets revealed and each time he goes out there as a play caller and every time they take a snap, Jalen Milroe is getting more confident. He's getting better. But here's the other thing, too, about this, Jim, and there's plenty of criticism to go around in the early part of the season. But look across college football, all right? Kyle McCord new quarterback at Ohio State. Carson Beck, new quarterback at Georgia. Jalen Milroe, of course. This was a big theme. New quarterback at Clemson. All those guys, it kind of looked like iffy. They were struggling a little bit. We were questioning them in the first 2 to 3 weeks. All of those guys now are performing at a super high level. Carson Beck had the best game he's had of his career. Okay, well, here we are in week 6 or whatever it is, and those guys have played a lot more football than they played in week 1. I think we've got to acknowledge, we gloss over that sometimes. And the same is for Jalen Milroe. So guys are going to get better. And you know what? We're probably going to have a conversation on a Monday morning 5 weeks from now, and somebody else is going to have 3 straight weeks of 350 yards and not turn the ball over and have 8 touchdowns. And they didn't play good in the first 2 weeks.
Before we put the Aggies to bed, it is Jimbo Fisher's birthday today, and he's catching some heat for the way he managed late in that game. He punted on a 4th and 1 in Alabama territory, just across midfield. He burned a timeout to kick the field goal. I mean, if you burn that timeout there, don't you want to go for it and try to get the touchdown there by burning the timeout?
Yeah.
You were down 9 at that point. What do you think of those two things? He's catching some heat from his fan base, which is normal after a loss, but they're pointing to those two scenarios, not just the loss, but, hey, if you're going to go out, let's go out with balls to the wall,
Yeah, and listen, I think he's catching even more heat because of his response to the question post-game. Don't know if you saw it, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he essentially said, well, if it had been 4th and inches, we would have gone.
Right.
4th and 1, 4th and a foot, 4th and 2.5 feet. What are we talking about here?
Technically, Jimbo, it is 36 inches. A yard is 36 inches.
That's right. If we break it down into inches. I thought in that moment, you're going toe-to-toe with Alabama. There's a rivalry there, not just between the two teams, but between the two coaches. And you've got an opportunity to shut the door. You got to do that. You got to go for it there. And you're good enough to get it. Now, I know they were struggling up front. To be honest with you, they got dominated for the most part by Alabama up front. But there's got to be something that you just tell your team, hey, listen, this is it, boys. Here we go. We're going to put it on you. We trust you. And this is the call we're going to make.